Well, um, we're gonna talk about something. We're going to talk about it. Okay. Tillis to Nome, disaster. Trump fires her days later, and the GOP are eating themselves. So, what is going on in the name? What is going on, guys? So, this is the story that comes from the Guardian. It says, "I'm sick of stupid." From exonerating Nome to breaking with Trump, Thom Tillis goes for the Fury final act in Congress. The Republican senator from North Carolina will not seek reelection after Trump threatens to primary him. I'd like to know why these Republicans get ballsy as soon as they say they're not going to run. Why can't you get ballsy while you're in office to protect the people and wake up some individuals? Why do you get ballsy when you're about to leave? That's kind of a real question, right? So here goes. The last US Senate hearing before Kristi Noem's ouster, right? Ouster. Um some the fieriest criticism from Homeland Security Secretary received came from not the outraged Republicans. Mm-mm. It came solely from a Donald Trump ally. Yes, it did. Isn't that interesting? What we've seen is a disaster under the leadership of Kristi Noem's. Disaster, said Thom Tillis, the senior Republican senator from North Carolina. At the outset of 10-minute screwing of the secretary, he dubbed a performance evaluation. Tillis has become known in Congress for giving people and policies he does not like such treatment in recent months. After he achieved something rare for Republicans, freedom from worrying about what Trump thinks of him. Wow. After Tillis broke with the president on his marquee spending bill in 2025, Trump threatened to back a primary challenger to Tillis, and the senator quickly announced that he would not seek re-election. Since then, he has adopted the persona of the Senate GOP internal critic, taking public issues for poor choices made by the Trump administration, though never the president himself. Kind of interesting because Adam Kissinger did the same, Liz Cheney did the same. But how about growing some? Oh, let's not forget Marjorie Taylor Greene did it as well. But how come we're not going after the situation while we're still in office? That's a question I have. And then it goes on to say, I've joked a number of times with people that say, well, you're doing, you're being more outspoken now that you're not running. That's the reality of it. Tillis denounces the administration officials he thinks should be fired and policies that should be dropped have put him firmly in the Senate's small camp of Republicans, dissidents, dissenters in recent months, alongside Alaska's Lisa Murkowski and Maine's Susan Collins. Let me tell you, Susan Murkowski makes me ill mad, ill, because she was the holdout on the big beautiful bill, but she decided to try and make some kind of deal with Donald Trump so that her constituents wouldn't suffer. But at the end of the day, he said, yeah, I'll help you out, no problem. But when it came to it, he did not exclude her constituents. So this is what you get. So apparently, it's Tillis, McCroskey, and Susan Collins who are calling him out. There we go. He called for Noam's reinvestigation after the immigration agents killed two U.S. citizens in Minneapolis and then took her to task when she appeared before the Judiciary Committee on which he sits, just before Trump fired her. Tillis has been similarly critical of Stephen Miller, the powerful White House aide and the architect of Trump's mass deportation campaign, and continues to block the nomination of Kevin Warsh, Warsh, Trump's pick lead for Federal Reserve, because the objects to the Justice Department investigation, the central bank's current chair, Jerome Powell. Y'all better watch who he's electing for that seat because that's your money. That's your money. Cha-ching. It may be all gone pretty soon because there's a lot of shit going on. It's the music to my ears of the Senate Democrats who are hoping to wield in voters' disenchantment with Trump to retake the chamber's majority in November midterm elections, and a must win for Tillis' seat in North Carolina to be successful. But Tillis, a 65-year-old with southern drawl, cropped gray hair, and the fondness for bolo ties, has made it clear that the point is to help Trump, not the opposition. Well, it's going to be up to the constituents to see what they want. Do you want health care? Do you want to rid of afford food? How about them gas prices? Yeah. I decided just to make the decision not to run for reelection, I can speak the truth to a president that I hope goes down in history as the most successful Republican president in the history of this country. Tillis said on the Senate floor in January. I mean, he's playing his cards, right? He has that potential. If he starts to recognize and advise that he's getting that I think is bad advice and won't age well, that's a tough needle to thread. In a Republican Party where allegiance to Trump is mandatory to succeed, and the threat of a presidential retaliation hangs over those who speak out. An interviewer, advisor to the senator, and observer of his career say unique political factors have opened the way for Tillis to spend his final months in the Senate disagreeing with little concern for consequences. Get focused on fixing the problem. That's the way we've been. Tillis' mantra, said Paul Shoemaker, his longtime political advisor. He's now able to be more vocal about it. He's able to be more vocal about because he doesn't have to worry about the dynamics. And that's reality. They only start to change the toot of their horn when they no longer have to worry about reelection. And we've seen it time and time again. A former management consultant who worked for IBM and PricewaterhouseCoopers, Tillis got his first taste of politics advocating for construction of bicycle paths in Charlotte suburbs. He served in his town's board of commissioners and then won elections for state house representatives in 2006. Yep. As a 2010 election year, Tillis, then the minority whip, set his sights on audacious goal, taking back control of the chamber from the Democrats, who had lost the majority only rarely in the prior centuries. The approach, the problem, like consultant he was, recalls Jordan Josh, a former longtime aide to Tillis, who was now a Republican strategist. The tool that he used was Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations where he took candidates and donors and throughout a very detailed data analysis he had done on each district, each candidate, each member, and how much it would cost to take back the House, Shaw said. And he was right. I like that because I think a lot of us are doing that just that exactly right now. And I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about we the people. We got our Excel sheets out, our PowerPoint presentations out, and we're talking precisely about these things. A red wave crashed across the country that year as voters turned on Barack Obama's administration just 2 years after it swept him into the White House. North Carolina, the Republican Party won large majorities in the state House, Senate, and Tillis became the House Speaker the following year. He brought the same data driven approach to managing the legislature, debuting a coding system for bills that assigned them very red. yellow, green labels based on their level of priority and making the staff and lawmakers wear wristbands that read jobs and economy to write them to remind them of their priorities. If anyone was off message, Sean recalled he would tell staff, snap the bands against your wrists. Wow, very smart. I gotta give it to him. But North Carolina Republicans did not confine their legislator to those areas. Under Tillis, the party's lawmakers passed a voter ID law that was at the time among the most restrictive in the country, among a host of reforms for to vote that made it harder to cast a ballot. They cutting funding for education, tightened access to abortions, refused to expand Medicare under Obamacare, and redrew federal and state legislator district lines to cement the GOP hold on the legislator, which is still controls this day. This is why I say that local elections matter, right? Because the legislators have so much to do with our rights locally. So watch out for those local elections. Don't let them pass you by and don't say, oh, they don't matter. They do matter. They are the ones that do our day to day. The fact of the matter is that he was the speaker of the state legislature at the time when North Carolina took a hard right turn because this sort of laboratory of conservative experimentation broke from decades of bipartisan consensus. And that's still the center theme. Uh, There's still a center theme. Yeah, I agree. Our politics in the state today, said Asher Hilbrand, a former Democratic congressional aide and campaign staffer to Obama, who now teaches policy at the University of Duke. In 2014, Tillis challenged the state Democratic Senator Kay Hagan, who was the first elected in 2008 when Obama carried the state on election night. Shoemaker recalls telling Tillis that despite expectations in the press, Hagan would win, and the data showed that he had the edge. You're the data guy. It's data guy. Give me one speed. Make it a victory speech, Shoemaker recalls. Tillis saying to him, having no concession speech ready was a risk. But it worked out. Tillis narrowly beat Hagan, and North Carolina was not elected a Democrat to the U.S. Senate since then. Despite controversies, policies he pushed, the state legislator Tennis gained a reputation as one of the most moderate members of the Republican conference in the U.S. Senate, especially as Trump era wound up and the party shifted further right. So some of you guys may say, like, "Ugh, why do I want to listen to this lady read? Why?" Well, statistics show that a lot of us don't have the time to read. A lot of us hate reading. A lot of us refuse to read. So maybe you'll listen to me. Maybe you won't. It's okay. It didn't always work out. In 2019, he opposed Trump's declaration of national emergency to build a wall along the southern border, which would have diverted millions of dollars from construction projects in North Carolina military bases, then reserved himself weeks later. Reversed himself, I'm sorry. He was reelected in 2020 after what was then one of the most expensive Senate races in the U.S. history. Tillis gained a reputation under Joe Biden as the Republican who Democrats could work with, despite being a major proponent of the 2012 constitutional amendment in North Carolina that banned same sex marriage. He voted in 2022 for the Respect of Marriage Act, which protected those same rights nationwide, a comprehensive bill to understand gun violence and Democratic presidents 11 trillion in infrastructure bill. In 2023, North Carolina GOP censored him for those votes. Now, Deep Tillis' rebellious streak was not obvious on the onset. Trump's second term, the senator supported all of the cabinet's nominees, with one objection to the president's appointed Ed Martin, a defender of the January 6th insurrection, a lead U.S. attorney office in Washington, D.C. But it was later that year, as the Senate was considering the one big, beautiful bill, Trump's proposal to cut taxes while funding mass deportation and other administrative priorities, that Tillis made his stand on partially offset of the bill's cost. Republicans proposed historical cuts to Medicaid, which the senator announced he could not support. On Truth Social, Trump quickly accused him of speaking out in order to get some publicity for himself for a possible but very difficult reelection, and then insulted him. Tillis is a talker and a complainer, not a doer. And a day after came, the day after came out the bill, Tillis announced that he would not seek a third reelection. What do I tell 63,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promises by pushing them off Medicaid because the funding is not there anymore? Guys, this was Tillis's quote. Reflecting on how his retirement took place, Tillis said it was Trump's accusation of grandstanding that he could not tolerate. That comment alone was just like, I'm not going to deal with this stuff, he said. But to be frank, the president and I have talked about this. I was already moving that direction anyway. It just seemed like the time wasn't right, given our differences. The closing lines of his statement offered a hint of how he would spend his final years in office. I look forward to solely focusing on producing meaningful results without the distraction of raising money or campaigning for another election. I look forward to having pure freedom to call the balls and strikes as I see fit, and representing the great people of North Carolina to the best of my ability. Why is it that when they retire or step away, they feel like they could speak freely? The sort of impairing the senator had in a mind became clear in months that followed. A member of the Senate Banking Committee, Tillis, said he would not consider any replacement for Ed for the federal government, Lisa Cook, who Trump tried to fire. Through Tillis has spoken approvingly of Warsh. He is holding up his nomination until the Justice Department ends its inquiry into Powell, a Republican Trump appointed during his first term, and who Biden nominated for the second term. And he has grown outright victorly about Miller and Noem, accusing them about providing the sort of bad advice that leads Trump astray. For Miller, the outrage was Greenland. Comments that the White House deputy chief of staff made that autonomous territory of Denmark should obviously be part of the United States. There is so much he is saying in this article in The Guardian. So much. That's stupid too, and I'm sick of stupid, he declared at the end of a lengthy floor speech in which he condemned Miller's comments on both absurd and insulting to NATO's ally whose soldiers died along Americans in Afghanistan. More recently, he told CNN Miller was a big problem for the administration and should be fired. When Noem appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this month, he criticized his criticism ranged not just from her handling of immigration enforcement, which in Tillis's view had resulted in the wrongful arrest of too many U.S. citizens, but also her handling to recover efforts from the Hurricane Helene in western North Carolina. Perhaps the senator wondered her decision to kill a dog and a goat when when then written about in her memoir. She said it was poor judgment. She would exhibit Homeland Security Secretary. You decided to kill that dog. You had not invested the appropriate time and training. And then you had the audacity to go into a book and say, it's a leadership lesson about tough choices, Tillis said. At the same lunch hour, you killed the goat. You killed the goat because you said it was behaving badly. Are you a farmer? You don't castrate a goat? You behave badly? You should have probably done that before. But my point is, those bad decisions made in the heat of the moment, not unlike what happened in Minneapolis. Butch. Though his dissent from the administration has limits, Tillis, for instance, did not back any of the war power resolutions seeking to terminate U.S. hostilities in Iran or Venezuela. The outspokenness has earned him new respect from across the aisle. I'm not surprised that he's speaking out forcefully, said the Democratic Senator Chris Coons, who chairs the Senate of Human Rights Caucuses with Tillis and who has worked with him on intellectual property issues. When he really went after Secretary Noem, it was clear that the foundation of it was a annoyance at her failure to deliver for the people of North Carolina. Tillis acknowledged the data was driven of his recent discontent, particularly the evidence that proved that some of Trump's policies are unpopular enough to risk blowback on vulnerable Republicans. He is turning on Noam in a tandem with a decline in Trump's approval rating, immigration. While the idea of seizing Greenland, the administration's tariffs, which he also criticized, similarly unpopular. We've got to focus on the people's concerns about items on the agenda right now that I think are just not resonating in some of these purple states. It's simple, he said. It's a data thing for me. This is not an ideological thing. It may be reflective of how his rate has changed since the Republicans ran rampart over the Democrats 16 years ago, though the Democratic president or Senate cabinet candidate has won in North Carolina since 2008. It remains a swing state as fast growing suburbs fill up with college educated voters who may learn right on the economic issues but have little interest in conservative social stance, said Morgan Jackson, a top Democratic strategist in the state. This is going to get kind of hairy out there, you know? I think Tillis has moved away from culture issues largely for political expedience, not to offend those suburban voters that are growing rapidly in the state. Jackson, who said has advised Roy Cooper, the former governor running for state senate. Had Tillis pursued re-election, he may have had problems with North Carolina's Trump supporting base, but Shoemaker said he still would have been outspoken as he is today because his path to victory runs through the state's largest volumes of unaffiliated voters. We have had separations on certain issues, and you're not going to win North Carolina. That's the dynamics of winning North Carolina. So we're here. We so he's where he has been today. Cooper's race against the former Republican National Committee chair, Michael Whatley, will be one of the most hard fought Senate contests this year, in conditions that may be the most favorable North Carolina Democrats have experienced since Obama was first elected. But though Tillis has said his goal is to see Republicans elected in swing states, Jackson said his statement could harm Whatley's campaign, which has thus far focused on his allegiance to Trump and the expected benefits of one big, beautiful bill. It sort of puts a D and an R at the same side against Whatley. That undermines Whatley's credibility when he's out there campaigning. What an amazing bill it was, Jackson said. As for Tillis, we'll say next. There's no telling. One thing about him for certain is you will not see his name on the ballot this year. Oh, yeah, he replied with a laugh. When asked whether he was truly done with federal elected office, he said 100%. Um, there's a lot to be said about Tom Tillis. But again, what I said at the beginning of this is why do they get brave? Why do they get brazen when they will no longer be elected? We've seen this happen with Liz Cheney. We've seen it happen with Adam Kissinger. We've seen it happen with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And now we're seeing it with Tom Tillis. Why can't you just work for the people? Why can't you just speak up and be honest about the legislation that is being passed and that it's not necessarily working for the people, but working for the 1% in this country? Be honest. Say the truth. Fight back. That's all I could say.